بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. The last 72 hours, or the last weekend, it has been a very interesting event. Very interesting at that, to be honest. It's a lot going on, of course, with the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And then 2 days later, the Republican convention, the appointing of the new vice president, someone that is so young, almost 39 or 40 years old. The question of democracy, the question of elections, the question of the decline of the United States as an empire. And then, of course, the petrodollar situation across the world, and at least with Saudi Arabia, and then the what's happening in these regions in general. But as you know, brothers and sisters, a lot, when we talk about the decline of any empire, a few things kind of they are very clear. They have meaning you can't hide them, you cannot miss them. One of them is political crisis. Whenever there is a crisis of a sort, not that you have too many people to choose from, rather you don't have enough people, or you have not been able to build a political class that can handle the affairs of the country. And we can kind of see that in today's elections, where there is a serious leadership crisis, a political crisis that can lead to even civil war. So, inshallah, to discuss all of these things, what's next for the U.S. empire? Where is this going? To discuss this, we have, as always, Dr. Abu Talha al-Malkawi to discuss the background realities and what's taking place, inshallah. As always, we always have a very interesting discussion with Dr. Malkawi, who always in many ways has the finger on the pulse. So, Dr. Abu Talha, welcome back to Islamic Oasis, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
And again, I am happy to be on the Islamic Oasis stage. This has been a platform always to speak the truth and to bring up most recent issues, political, economic, social, whether concerns Muslims, Islam in general, or other vital issues, strategic issues. So you have brought up very important concepts, issues, and ideas to discuss. I hope we will have the bandwidth and time to cover all of these topics.
Inshallah, Abu Talha. Well, we have a lot to, there's a lot going on, Abu Talha. Yeah. Let me ask you this, Sheikh. Sitting where you are, when you are looking at the assassination attempt of ex-president of the country, especially the United States, and also candidate, at a time like this where there is elections, there is a political crisis, there is a leadership crisis. What do you observe, Sheikh, from where you are? It almost seems like we are living in a third world country. I mean, the politics is even one beyond a third, I mean, whatever a third world country today means.
Well, no, let's be a little bit fair here. The United States had been a very open theater for these type of assassinations or assassination attempts, especially for either presidents or presidential candidates. We know that two of the Kennedy families, one was a president who really was killed and assassinated, and the other one was there was an attempt for assassination. You have Robert Kennedy and John F. Kennedy. And before, I was reading the other day, there was, I think, a total of 11 U.S. presidents, or 18, yes, who were either assassinated or had assassination attempts. So, in a politically diverse country like United States, a very large state with lots of interest and conflicts of interest, whether it's personal, or it could be political, or it could be the deep states, or it could be other parties. So this is not something new. That doesn't mean that this is normal. No, it is abnormal. It is abnormal. Whether we call it third world-like countries or first world-like countries, usually political assassination is one of the worst methods that are used in current history in order to influence a certain change. Now, having said that, we know Trump has been his presidential era, the 4 years he was president, it was very controversial. Although he was a bit saved with Corona, because Corona had made everything almost in stalemate, so there was no big room for controversies, because it was, I think, 2 years of his presidency were dominated or over-dominated by Corona and the pandemic. So there was little to deal with the controversies of Trump's policies. Now, coming back to election, especially the Supreme Court had convicted him with, I think, 35 felonies, and he has, and all of these have not been ratified by the Supreme Court yet, which means he still has a room to run before he can get blocked. So there are lots of things going on Trump personality. And we also know that Trump, when he ran for the second term and he did not win, he openly stated that the deep state does not want Trump to be back into presidency. And he lost the presidency, and he claimed that it was forged and counterfeited. It was stolen. The election was stolen from him. And he blamed not only the Democratic Party, but he blamed who stands behind the United States. And he actually mentioned in this election that if he loses the election, he does not win, he again will insist that it is a fraud, that somebody must have stolen the election. So there is a big controversy here. Now, does that impact the overall image of the United States and power? I really don't think so. I think America runs by a machine that's absolutely behind the scene. There is, they call it the deep state, and this is not my words. This has been in the media. It has been in the literature and many books. People talk about it. In fact, there are people who identify personalities and persons and names who stand in the deep state. But that's probably true or not true is irrelevant. But the fact of the matter, United States is completely run by a system which is a coherent system, irrespective of the power or the weakness of the president. You could have the most powerful president like George Bush, the father, a very powerful president, or Eisenhower, very powerful president, or Richard Nixon, or can be very weak like George Bush, the son, or an almost helpless or handcuffed president like President Obama. Was very intelligent, very bright, but totally handcuffed, not able to achieve whatever he wanted, whether it was the insurance rebuilding in America, or the what's called the Obamacare. Barely 10% of that was passed, or whether it was his commitment to remove the jail, which was in Cuba. What was the name of
Guantanamo.
The Guantanamo camp, which is a jail. And there are so many things. So you could have this or that, but nevertheless, America runs. And it runs on, as a capitalist country, it runs by those who really own the money, or the source of money, if you will. You could be a billionaire, but you are not part of the policy makers or policy influencer. But there are sources of money, the ones who can generate the infrastructure that allows money to flow in America and in the world. In this case, the Federal Reserve, and the families who own the Federal Reserve Bank, like the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Stanleys, the Rothschilds, the Cohen. There are, I think, 7 or 8 families that run that, and these have strategic centers, and they have all types of research institutes that help them formulate policies and make the policies and even run the policies. So that is, in a nutshell, America does not collapse or grow by the power of presidents or the intelligence of a president. You could have a Trump, one of the most out of it, if you will, or George Bush, the son, and you still have the first Gulf War, and you had then after that the occupation of Afghanistan, Iraq, all during the presidency of George W. Bush, who really did not have the capacity, the intellectual capacity to make it. But it did happen.
But Sheikh, how does the state look at this? You know, any state, when you are, I understand, of course, there are institutions that are running the country. They are in their place. They have their functions that they need to do. But when a state, the head of a state, or going to be head of a state, or a candidate, I mean, in this case, it didn't even look like it was really the assassination of Trump. It almost looked like the president of the country himself was hit, because the way they are already making him look like he is going to be the next. He that's it. That's him. It's going to be him, and that's the media, at least. But how does the state think about this, Sheikh? An assassination attempt on such a is that attack on infrastructure? Really, is the attack on ideas, or is it attack on the system? Is it attack on the type of personalities that are running the show? What does this assassination present or represent?
In this case of Trump and Biden, it is an attempt to influence who is going to be the next president. Now, had the assassination succeeded, then you will have one quote unquote idiot. One is down. Then they have to look for another idiot who run the country. But what I was trying to say, even if you succeed to take off the president or the president to be, that does not impact the power of the state or the direction of the state. That impacts only part of the public opinion that is sided with one or the other. So like you mentioned, well, the bullet was shot at Trump, but the one who was assassinated or killed Biden, because that's how the media is putting it up. And that probably they are opening the all the types of scenarios that, oh, this might have been an orchestrated act, so that Trump would come up as a hero rather than a dead person. So
I mean,
all of these talks, they are
they're
opening this
supposed to have a
scenario.
meeting tomorrow. The Congress is supposed to have some type of meeting tomorrow with the Secret Service, because it was too. I mean, they're not putting it that is, but you know that they're not blaming, but at the same time, you know, the president was, or Trump was shot from almost 400 yards. Some say 150 yards, whatever that number
Yeah.
is. That's a big deal, Sheikh. I mean, there's a discussion going on whether there was enough money given to the security, whether all of these things. But look, the Americans are putting it off as, okay, some 20-year-old Thomas, what's his name, Crook, who
Right.
has no political history, who has no real history on, you know, he's not an ideological person. This was not a group behind this or that. But the question still remains, Sheikh, and as such a huge attempt by even a 20-year-old is a very symbolic. Is it that the
It is.
20-year-old, the youth in this country, are they pissed off? What are you thinking? What are you looking at?
Look, as I said, number one, this is not something new in America.
That's true. It's a very
When
violent country. Yes.
and after 20 or maybe more than 40 years of the assassination of Kennedy, the books that were written about, was it real, or was it orchestrated, or was it influenced by the intelligence? Was the guy who killed Kennedy, was he killed by on purpose so that you lose the evidences and the track? Still, the talks are going on. So there is no way in the world someone will find out what really was the motive behind the assassination attempt of Trump, whether it was orchestrated or not, whether he wins the election because of that, or he loses the election because of that. That's going to continue to be discussed. But I think the overall scenarios is to divert the whole public opinion from discussing issues which are not being solved neither by Biden nor by Trump if he comes in. And that's the issue of decline of the overall structure of America. That's going back to the issue of democracy and capitalism, the money and the essence of democracy. That type of attempt has diverted the attention of the public opinion through very well orchestrated media, so that we will be all indulged in trying to understand the motives, who's behind it, who benefits from it, and how come it did happen in within 150 or 200 yards. Why the Secret Service, they could not find it or detect it, or had they detected it, why they did not respond fast enough. All of these logistics. But the issue here is now, does that represent something that we need to understand where America is going? Where is it heading? Is it heading up? Is it heading down? Is it stable?
We'll come to that,
the
but I
most-
have one more point that I want you to look at before we go to that topic of decline of American decline, or the end of an empire. Sheikh, democracy. So look, the way is democracy this gullible, meaning that it it's so easy to maneuver the public opinion that you can create crisis and then hence through crisis, in this case political leadership crisis, and then win elections. This is so. I guess what I'm asking is that, look, at this point, the people are just thinking, okay, he was shot, he should not have, we should just give him a chance, whatever it is. The actual discussions that you're saying that should happen when you are electing or selecting a president, it's not happening. So is that, what are we discussing
Well,
here when there is an attempt like this?
what we should be discussing is, does the assassination, whether it succeeds or it fails, does it change the actual reality of the whole issue of democracy? Where has it been going, and does it add to its decline, or it helps its improvement? That be part of the discussion. But the issue is,
But is that deep state that does that, Sheikh?
Deep state is watching it very carefully and trying to impact it. Yes, but what I want to allude to now is that today the issue of democracy is above and beyond the ability of the deep state to reverse. It's in deep danger. If I speak from the side of democracy, assume I am an advocate of democracy, which is I'm not. I see that democracy has been in great danger, and it has slipped away from whether the deep state or the institutes that watch for democracy or that wanted to stay. It has slipped away, and it's very, very difficult to reverse. And I tell you, how did that happen, and when it happened, and how can we measure it, in fact? Well, if anyone reads political science correctly or political history correctly, will find out that there was a very heated discussion at the time of formation of the United States, when they were trying, the so-called the founding fathers, to build the Constitution, or the origin of the Constitution, the basis of Constitution. And there was a big discussion about democracy and freedom, especially. And they discussed what comes first, freedom or security. And the debate ended up in, if you prefer security over freedom, which is freedom of speech means democracy, because that's what comes out of freedom of speech, is that you elect your people, choose your constitution, choose your laws, find your lifestyle based on the consensus, or what's called the social contract of the people. That's the idea. And the debate ended up, if you prefer security over freedom, you will lose both freedom and security. If you get freedom number one, you will be able to sustain security as well as freedom. And eventually that was built in the Constitution, which is the First Amendment, which is the main issue, is that the freedom of speech is guaranteed for each and everyone. Now that was a fact. The United States leadership, political parties, intelligence, they played with this theme. Somewhere started contemplating the issue of, we have to be secure first, especially when the Cold War started. When the Cold War started, there was a big fear that this war will impose upon us to put our security number one. And then the fight against communism and the rise of communism brought up the apartheid, and then brought the era of, what's his name, McCarthy era. And there was then a big debate again that, look, we are again going against our principles. So they slowed down on this issue. They slowed down on putting security number one. But then, after the collapse of when they started the Cold War and they had the agreement between Kennedy and Khrushchev, they managed. America was very intelligent in managing the so-called the crisis that threatens democracy. Not only threatens the existence of the United States, they preferred to have a Cold War that will never go into a hot war. So we put our security aside. We guaranteed that no one is going to tamper with the existence of the United States or the power of the United States or the outreach of the United States. We got it settled. So now we are free again to live the way we want and to elect whomever we want or to have whichever party we want. So they are back to normality. Now the Soviet Union exited the war by design or by force. Doesn't matter. 1991, Soviet Union is out. Communism as an ideology is out. Now, there is no enemy to go behind, and the threat that the United States could face is absolutely unknown. It's absolutely unknown. Then the issue of terrorism came. And the United States, at the time of George Bush, the son, decided that terrorism is our enemy number one. It's a threat to our lifestyle. And that's when they passed, the first time in the history of the United States, the Patriot Law, which puts security above and beyond freedom. You have to be patriot. To be patriot means you have to give up. You have to give up your rights, your freedom, your ability to speak or ability to transact or ability to criticize because you are patriot. So that's the essence of the Patriot Law. And for the first time in the history of the United States, they enacted a law where you can be summoned and convicted without the right to have a lawyer to defend you. Now when I said it slipped, this issue, it slipped and it became part of a culture, part of the law. It is not something bypassing. And until now, that law, the Patriot Law, has not been revoked. And although it was supposed to be to treat or to deal with a certain situation that they eventually called terrorism, and later on they brought it for Daesh or ISIS or so on, the Islamic Islamophobia and so on. But nevertheless, it's now as if it was an amendment. It's not in the Constitution, but it's a law that is taking already almost 30 years. That is in the process. So United States jeopardized the main article that allows democracy to prevail, and they reversed what the founding father had said. So that is the main issue for democracy. So democracy is in decline. Now it's not because the assassination, not because of January 7. Those are symptoms. Those are symptoms that try to show that no matter what the consequences are, we can reverse issues. We have a say in the process, whether it's by through militancy or through speech or through political activities. This is how Americans show up that's how they practice their influence or impact on democracy, but that is irrelevant. These are only small acts. They are irrelevant. What is really relevant when we come to look at the whole overall situation, United States as a public, parties, political parties, public opinion, media, those are what we call the political medium here, which is basically the media, the parties, the public opinion influencers, they have been absolutely silent on the reverse of one of the most important pillars of the making of America. That is, what is number one priority? Our security or our freedom? Today, it's security. And that's why in the discussion today, really all of the discussions about this Crooks Act is what are the loopholes in our security system that enable that to happen. But no one is addressing, well, this is America. It represents its ideas, its thoughts in all types of manners. Now, if the way you represent your opinion or your response is against the law, if it's against the law, then you convict him according to the law, and it stays right there. It stays right there. But the issue here had to come into public. Look, this is America. It can represent itself in a bad manner or in a good manner, in a lawful manner or unlawful manner, but that is the makeup of a system. That's very natural. That's not, and that's why when someone counted about 18 incidents of assassination, that's a natural outcome of what is called democracy. So if you go against that now and try to find some what should we have done in order to stop that or prevent that, they should discuss the uplifting of the democratic issues in America, the uplifting of the freedom of speech. At the same time, when they say, yes, we do have freedom of speech, but what is wrong is wrong. That's a wrong act because it's against the law. And
But Sheikh, here we're facing a political. Okay, so how do you define leadership crisis, Sheikh? Because it's not. I think the attempt. When it happens to when there is already a political leadership crisis here. I mean, U.S. is facing leadership crisis. It's having a very tough time trying to produce people that can run the U.S. I mean, this is. First of all, do you agree with that the U.S. is having a tough time trying to produce?
Look, as I said, United States leadership.
Although I do understand it doesn't matter who runs the country. There is a infrastructure behind it. I do understand that. But the symptoms...
And officially, there was a time when the president of the United States used to be just called the president. Today, there is a new term. They call him a CEO, and they call the government administration. Government is not administration. Political leadership is not administration. Just like when you run corporation, when you appoint a CEO who runs the daily affairs of the company or the corporates, then there is a board of directors and the main stakeholders who drive the overall objectives and the general policies, and then the CEO has to come and find the means and tactics in order to achieve these objectives and goals. And if he doesn't, then he gets out. And the other day I was reading, in fact, one position. I was trying to look for some positions once I retire from the university where I would go. So there was an announcement for a CEO. And I said, oh, let me see what's that. Then they actually say the CEO shall be capable of understanding the main goals and objectives set forth by the board of directors. And then he must present certain policies that once they are approved by the upper level, then he should be able to implement them. That's exactly what a president of the United States is. It doesn't, and that's why they started calling him CEO. And that's why they started calling the government administration, like the Bush administration, Biden administration, Trump administration. That's an administration. So in reality, when we talk about
I see what you're
political
saying.
leadership, I agree America today lacks political leadership. It does. And that's not my opinion alone. Look at Brzezinski, one of the most prominent national security advisors in the recent history of the United States, in his book about the America between hegemony and leadership. He really addressed this very question. Do we have what it takes to lead? His answer was no more. We don't. And then
Is that because now? Okay, so let's move from leadership crisis to the conceptual framework of capitalism is falling apart.
No, just 1 second. I wanted to finish what Brzezinski had,
Okay,
his
go ahead,
theory, which I think is absolutely right. He says leadership is one of the most difficult things that a country, a society, or a party that can practice. It's not easy because you need always to be a producer of leadership ideas, because leadership is an idea. At the end of the day, leadership is not a person, it's an idea. But then that idea is represented completely by individuals. Just like in Islam, our leadership is our aqidah. But if that aqidah as a leadership aqidah does not overwhelm you or becomes part of you, you will never be a leader, no matter how much successful you are. So leadership is an idea. Now, United States has abandoned the concept of leadership because they found it to be very difficult vis-a-vis the other types of leaderships that were coming in the world, like socialism, capitalism, new empire like the Soviet Union, the old British and European heritage and civilization and history and culture. It was absolutely difficult. So then they moved with purpose. It was not something that they were just by mistake. No. They found that the best way to lead is to overcome your enemy or counterpart, overcome by hegemony, by power, by absolute strategic power. And then they were able to obtain it. They got it after the Second World War, or during that. They got the first atomic bomb. They used it, they practiced it, they scared the heck out of the world. Then they built a very strong military capability and bases of soldiers and fleets and all types of naval ships all over the world, from Philippines to Japan to Saudi Arabia to Qatar to Germany. Then they found that this is much easier to achieve whatever interest you were trying to achieve them through leadership. So now, after practicing that for many years and seeing the results, they really have lost what it takes to build leadership, because they have abandoned that, and they selected that military superiority instead of and that really worked excellent until 1991. 1991, the Soviet Union said, I no longer want to become a foe of America. What are you going to do with your military power? Military power is useless now. You are not going to fight Europe. They are your friends. They are very, they call them, as Friedman was saying, the worst of your enemies are the actual friends whom you think of as enemies. What we call them, the whatever, the enemy friend, if you will. I think he has a good term for that, better than my terms. And he was calling Europe. Now, Europe is an enemy, but they show up as a friend. So you cannot use power against them. How could you lead now? Now you no longer can use your power, and you have already forgotten the ability to lead. And remember, now here I want to be very, very punctual. When Trump came to the NATO during his last year of presidency, 2019, just before 1 year before the elections, and he left the office, and he was talking to the European leaders, and Macron was telling him, why should I pay for the NATO? The NATO is in the ICU. It's no longer needed. Why do we need the NATO? We don't have any external power like the old Soviet Union. So now how can you convince these people with your charisma, with your leadership, not charisma as Trump, but as the political leadership of the United States, to prove to Europe and to the others that you have to continue rally behind me, because I'm the one who can lead you into the prosperity of the world. And the rest of the world sees that America is behind in its trade, behind its invention, behind in its bringing new technologies to the world. China is today number one in AI, although it was invented by United States scientists. But the rest of the world today, each and every country in the world is doing today manufacturing cars. There was a time when the car motor vehicle manufacturing, big trucks, small trucks, cars, it was only GM, Ford, and Chrysler, and few companies in the world like Mercedes, like some British who do the and Sweden, etc., or other countries. But it was the dominance of the United States, technology, productions, etc. Now, when they started pulling the people around them and behind them, rallying behind them because of the power, not because of the leadership, they thought that this is the easiest way. Now, as I said, Soviet Union is out of the picture. No more need for power. America found itself that it cannot even impose the fees or ask a request for the fees to pay for the NATO from the NATO countries. They came back to the hegemony, and that's why they invented the Russian-Ukraine war. Everybody knows the Russian-Ukraine war is invented by the United States, and of course Russia, because it's too stupid, the Russian policies, governments, it has always been, I mean, the Soviet Union was an era which ended, but Russia is not capable of being a real political entity. So they fell into the trap of the United States. They made a war to scare the heck out of Europe, to become using the hegemony now one more time to push or to rally Europe and the whole world behind it. Look, if you don't follow me, here's the Russians are going to use their nuclear weapons, not against me. They will not be able to touch the United States. They will touch you in Europe. So you better behave.
So
that's what he said in his book in 1999. Go back to that book, and at some time we may have a quick reading of that book, Between Hegemony and Leadership. He says United States can no longer lead with democratic principles. They have become used to hegemony, and they cannot lead without it. It's over. So that is the real problem with the United States. And it takes only one new power in the world that can ignore the political leadership of the United States, which it does not exist, and is not scared of the hegemony of the United States. Then that will show the biggest crack.
Look, you said leadership is an idea, and of course this is based on whatever the aqidah of that that system is. So Sheikh, here's the thing. I mean, when you look at any society, well, like the United States now, where should where should ideas emerge from? But the ideological leadership, let's say, and I'm asking this question in a certain framework here. If we agree that, let's say, there is there is a crisis, has United States in the last 8-10 years not be able to produce capitalist in that sense, meaning when you listen to some of the podcasts that are happening in the last, let's say, a month or two, talking especially during these elections and all of this, one of the discussions that's been very interesting to hear is that in a country that is 350, 600 million, whatever the population is, it has not been able to attract the youth of the country to seek leadership. And when you think of the people who should run the country in the future, they feel they don't feel as if they have any skin in the game, in a sense that the money that it takes to run the country or to be even in these elections, to the kind of access that you have to have resources to, even if those who are sincere and wanting to run the country, they don't see that they can enter this arena. It's only for a certain very few elite. So can that, does that, or that small elite is that runs leadership, or is that crisis already? I mean, this is more of an ideological question to you, but
that's already crisis. That's already crisis, because here goes the history. When we thought as America that in order to lead the world, so the world can become a source of our income and money, and can rally behind us, we need the top military power. And the top military power requires the top money, the capitalist money, the big money. So now, instead of focusing on institutions that produces political leadership, ideological political leadership, we emphasize the need to continue to build the elements of power that keeps us on the top, because we already abandoned the fact. And that's the problem. We abandoned the fact that we need political, ideological personalities who absolutely engraved within the ideas and the thoughts of the freedom of speech, the freedom of belief, the freedom of personality, the freedom of ownership, all of this which came as on the basis of the separation of church and the state, and then the social contracts, and then those were the ideals of the new civilizations of the West. Now they said, oh, all of this we can summarize and we can reduce them to one element, which is having the power, having the money. So it doesn't matter if we put this whole issue of money to belong to 1% of the nation, this 1% of the nation, as long as they can keep their money and they can bring the power that protects this money, we are okay. So they have reduced the emphasis on producing a political leadership.
Talha, hold on. That's a very interesting talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. Look, so what produces ideas, Sheikh? And the reason I'm asking this is that, look, money, capitalism is about money. So now they are saying that, look, capitalists, we have to produce capitalists. But that's an idea itself that produces the money, that produces the power. But now, if in this in any ideological discussion of systems, of whatever, when we look at capitalism, Sheikh, who produces the ideas, and how does that turn into political power or money, whatever it is, or is it in capitalism? I guess that's what I'm trying to get to, the crisis of capitalism
Yeah.
here. What is the
Let,
crisis of capitalism today?
let me give you the analogy. Let me give you the analogy. When you look at the money making, you will find that there is a well-defined system in the United States, whether it's written or unwritten, where the continuation of the power of money remains confined within a group of people that continue to teach and inject the thoughts and ideas and the systems and the techniques and the ways of keeping the money growing above a certain level. And they created institutions for that, big institutions like the stock market, like the indexes, like the trying to see where the market is going up or down by the penny, by the stock, etc. And they have built all the instruments that are necessary to monitor the growth of capital or the decline of the capital or the means and the ways of going into the next stage. We have not seen that on the political aspect. They left it for the universities and institutions to teach the people. Whoever grasps that, then he becomes a politically engraved type of person, or who goes into the party, and through the party elections, etc., he becomes on the top of the hierarchy. He may or may not have what it takes to be a leader. Whereas on the issue of money, no, they have built very strong institutions. And we will come to the petrodollar issue in a second. How did they think about keeping up always with the superiority of the money, of money holding? Whereas when it comes to the political making of a nation, there has been big shortage. Now, can we find someone who is absolutely genius like Kissinger? Of course, you can find 10, 15, 20. But do you have a mechanism to produce Kissingers or Brzezinski or Nixon or Roosevelt? Do you have that mechanism? Where is it? No, they don't have that. Do you have a mechanism to make sure that your capitalist image remains up and running, to keep your dollar up at the level which it has to be? They do have the mechanism, and they do have the institutes, and they do have the mechanism and the ways, and they do have the family support and backup. The way the wealth goes from remains confined within a group of people. So the fact that the total wealth in the United States, more than 80%, remains always within less than 1%, or actually, in reality, remains within the a handful of families that controls the majority of the money. That does not come randomly or without plan. No, there is a plan behind that. There are all types of machineries that work to keep that intact. Whereas on the political sense, they don't do that. Why? Because they think with the capitalism alone, they can over-dominate all the shortages of democracy, and they can suppress all their foes and enemies, and they make them rally behind them, whether they like it or not, by power, by force. And that one of the things which I have always contemplated, look, all it takes to reveal the weakness of America is to build absolute peaceful world that does not have conflict. Remove conflicts from the world. The necessity for the leadership of the United States will go away, and no one will look after. It will collapse directly. That's of course one way, but that's not going to happen because America keeps creating conflicts. Show me a time since the United States, and before it Britain, of course, a time period where the world was out of a serious conflict for 1 second. Zero.
So is that
There is zero
same policy when it comes to domestic policy too, Sheikh? Yani you create conflict. Is that conflict creates what is it? Conflict creates
That's
new
because
ideas. Is that
no,
a
no,
wrong thing to say? The conflict creates ideas.
no. Conflict does not create ideas. Conflict keeps the solution of the problems in the hand of the powerful. That's what conflicts are.
That's one idea.
That's why.
No,
Yeah, that's one idea. That's why in some states, look in the United States, look at the rise and fall of gangs. Like in Chicago used to be one of the famous places for gangs. Now gangs, these are the group of people who could or have the ability to create a fire somewhere. Now because that fire and the killing, you need the police to come in and the secret services and so they come and dominate the area. Why? Because there's somebody set up a fire, set up a killing stage. Now, at the time, you'll find, but does the United States Secret Service and police and security is incapable of removing the whole gang and going after them? Of course not. They can't do that. And they have the power, they have the manpower. No, they want them to be there. They want the conflict creators to be there so we can dominate. So that you will always need me as a service, as someone with a gun, with the official gun. The one with the unofficial gun, he creates the conflict. Now, they talk about the Rifle Association lobbies, and one of the reasons that they cannot have laws because of the big lobbying group for the Rifle Association in America. The truth of the matter is not because of the lobbying group. It's because we need that rifles, that guns, that weapons to be in the hands of sporadic people that eventually we know who they are. And we know that because of that gun, there is going to be a fire somewhere. And that's why when I show up my power in order to control one small piece of that fire, then I become the macho guy in the country. So yes, small conflicts inside countries, they can be used in order to dominate and to show my ultimate power. You don't need my law or my specific rules or ideas or thoughts to increase or to improve the behavior of the people or to educate them better or to remove the tools that could make them criminals. You don't need that. You need my power after the fact. And that's what they use in the world. Let's create a conflict in Yemen, in Sudan, in Russia, all over the world. Let these conflicts, and who can solve them? Well, not solve them. You need my power so I can give you weapons. I will sell you a weapon. I will sell both sides. In Yemen, both sides, they get their weapons from the United States. In Sudan, both sides, they get their weapons from the United States. In Russia, in this war, Ukraine gets it from Europe directly. Russia gets it from American so-called agents or supporters. They get it from Iran. They get it from Turkey. Some of that. They get some of their help from China. And China, nowhere in the world it can sell a single weapon to someone in conflict without permissions from the US. Nowhere in the world, because they have agreements with them. They have big agreements. So the ones who are fueling these wars and conflicts is the one who wants this fire to continue to flame. So I'm the one who can put it off at the time when I want to.
But Sheikh, does that not affect the American hegemony itself too? I mean, can't somebody come and say that, look, it's too many conflicts, we can't handle all at the same time? I mean, can it not be the cause for American loss of control? I mean, that's also possible.
It can be only if there is a power that rises almost with the same strength and mentality and ideas and abilities like America. As long as the rest of the countries are subordinates or dominated by
It
this
won't
power,
make much of a difference.
no, it will not make too much difference. It will make difference only if a new ideological state that is absolutely determined to come sufficiently powerful so that it can challenge this issue of conflict maker in the world. So
Okay, so
America runs on conflict.
America lands on conflict. I still have an issue with can conflict create ideas? That's still something that I would love to discuss with you. I mean, really, do you not think that conflicts can generate ideas?
No, conflicts do not generate ideas. Conflicts are confined to the ideas that are imposed upon them.
So,
But
what is the difference
conflicts
between
can
conflict and necessity, Sheikh?
necessity is different. That's what I was trying. Conflict can create necessity, and necessity can invoke ideas and thoughts. Yes, that's fine. That I agree. But not the conflict by itself does not create ideas.
So,
But
is that
conflicts
what
can
is
show
that?
necessity.
Can one say that U.S. is constantly trying to do that to stay in power, to generate conflict and hence generate ideas? Or you're saying no, that's not.
No, no. Just to generate conflicts and to make sure that out of these conflicts, necessities does not rise up. In fact, let me give you the example. The conflict in Palestine.
Mm.
Now, the conflict in Palestine has been going on for a long time. There is the Jewish state called Israel inside. It's very powerful in the area. Now, if you look at that as a conflict, it creates a necessity. The necessity is to have a powerful entity that can stand up to be able to challenge the state of Israel. That's a necessity. And that necessity, once it comes obvious and it's discussed and it's among the political and leaders and thinkers, then you say, oh, okay, that means what does it take to beat up or to be able to challenge or to counter the power of Israel? You need a state. You need a state that has capabilities of fighting. You need a state that has technological base. You need a state that has the ability to fight. You need a state that's absolutely independent, that's not dependent on a. You need a state that has sufficient ideology and ideas and thoughts that can make the people fight. That's a necessity that would lead the people to say, oh, well, why do we have to look too far away? We have it. We just had it almost 100 years ago. Let's bring it back. Khilafah state or Khilafat as they call it. That's a necessity can lead there. Then the genius type of thinkers of conflicts, because conflicts have their own thinkers, is how is it possible to keep the people away from this necessity? We have to make sure that we create entities that resemble or that tells you, okay, wait a second, let's try this. Let's try a war in 1967, did not work. Or let's try some guerrilla war. Create PLO. Create within the PLO 7 factions. Soviet Union armed this faction. Britain armed the second one. France armed the third one. Fourth one is armed by the United States itself, etc. So let's get 7. And let's put them under umbrella. And let them take the lead for a while. So that will hide that necessity. Same thing in within the Russian Ukraine war. You can easily, if you are outside the conflict, you are not within the conflict, you can look and see, oh, that means the EU must focus on having their own security army, European security, national European security forces, which has been an idea for many years. But then they have been postponing it all the time because let's get rid of this, let's get rid of that. Then why they were postponing it? Because they have not, or the conflicts were serious enough to say, deal with it now. If you deal with it tomorrow, if you wait until you get your national security forces, you'll be wiped out. So that's you create that in the mentality of the people. So it's a whole issue. Look, you have to be genius in order to get out of this mess. And the only geniuses today are the ones who are motivated by ideas. An idea can make geniuses. It's not a person who becomes a genius by himself. There are ideas that inherently, like the Islamic Aqidah as Aqidah, not as practices or as rituals, as idea, is inherently capable of producing people who are genius. And genius means someone who can always think above and beyond current conflicts, above and beyond the current status quo. That's what a genius. A genius is not someone who can plays with AI. A genius is someone who could have seen at some point of time that with all the data available in the world, somebody can have some mechanism to sort out through all of this data and make some intelligent decisions. That's genius. A genius who can see ahead of the people and then can make a route that seems very difficult. See, a route that looks for everyone is almost impossible. You say, this is the route we will take no matter what the sacrifices are. That's a genius. Now, who can create these genius people? Islam can. Islamic ideology can. Islamic Aqidah can, has the capability. All other ideologies cannot create geniuses. Geniuses and other ideologies are motivated by their own thinking themselves. That's it. It's not ideological. It's not within the ideas. But in Islam, it's way different. That's why today within Islam, you will find thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands or even millions, who can see above and beyond current conflicts. Look, Allah Azza wa Jal enabled us to see even beyond this world. And act as if this whole road is extendable, this life and the hereafter. You cannot be more. You cannot beat that. You cannot beat that. When you say, and this is very important, you say, look, this road is very difficult. I can face so many challenges, and then I can be out of power. But wait a second. There is one more power above and beyond this world, which is a God who is actively involved in this world. Oh, I should gain that power onto my side. I should work. That's genius. Or if I do not finish my work today in my current life and I die without it, my reward is going to be in the next life. So I will go through this route no matter what. Who can do that? Who has that capability but a real believing Muslim, not a Muslim, a practicing Muslim. There is a difference between a practicing Muslim who today, these 3 days, is fasting all these 3 days, just like Ramadan. That's a practicing Muslim. But a genius is the one who expands his horizon. When he makes a decision to do something, I go above and beyond this world. From what powers are on my side, one of the greatest powers that can be on your side is the power of the Creator, Allah Azza wa Jal. If you can win it. So as a genius now, or as a person, when I start thinking with every route I will take, I will make sure that I do everything possible to guarantee that Allah Azza wa Jal is on my side. That is genius. Sorry,
no, it's okay. The issue of petrodollar, Sheikh. When we are talking about is I mean, this also affects a lot with what
Yeah.
the U.S. power in the world. I mean, first of all, how true
Yeah.
is this that
Well,
United States is even,
there
or
is,
Saudi or
there is
anybody
a
else
big
is thinking?
story behind that. Look, there is a big story. I have to, again, one more time, to separate between political, ideological genius thinking, which America no longer has it. But when it comes to money and capitalism, they are absolutely superb.
See, Sheikh,
Superb.
I'm almost confused when you're saying that every single time.
Yeah.
Because I'm. So you're saying, look, when you say money, I mean, why
Money
are you not
capital.
saying that
Like,
but you don't? Are you saying capitalism is collapsing? You're not saying it's collapsing.
no. There is, it is collapsing, but for some different reason. But I will tell you where their thinking has been confined. That's why they let go of the political ideas and genius thinking, and they focused on the capitalism part. Because
So is
see,
that okay?
all
Is this
this,
different? Hold on, Sheikh. Is this difference between an ideology and the institutions? Are you saying that America has been building that institution, Federal Reserve System, let's say IMF, let's say banks, whatever, all of these things that keep the money
yeah,
rolling? But
yeah.
are you saying
What
that the
I'm saying
ideas,
is,
or even the ideas that produce those institutions, are no longer thinking? The is that what you're saying? I mean, ideological.
they are different. Look, the ideas that
Go
produce
ahead. Go.
capitalism, can you hear me?
No. Go ahead. Repeat that again.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Go ahead.
See, in America, there are two main institutions. One institution has to do with political
Right.
leadership, which comes from one of the idea. See, the main ideas in the Western civilization after the separation of church and the state, the new civilization of Western world has four ideas. Each one of them produces an institution by itself. One idea is the freedom of speech that produces democracy as a rulership,
As an institution. All
and
right.
as an institute. Freedom of ownership
Mm.
is totally different. That produces the institute of capitalism. Freedom of behavior, it's a completely instituted, is a complete different idea that produces the social institution, which produces the LGBT and the like, which is almost parallel. There are some intersections, but they are parallel. Now, when it comes to the freedom of ownership and all that comes out of that, they have absolutely superb ideas and thoughts. So let's start now. Those ideas and thoughts that enable the unbounded growth of wealth. Unbounded. There are no bounds, which means I could be a trillionaire. Now, a few years ago, when we were talking, we said we could be billionaires. Today, there are trillionaires. And tomorrow it will be zillionaires with add the Z, which is 10 to the power 15. Absolutely uncountable amount of wealth. So in early 70s, the geniusity of those big caps in America, they said gold is a very strong power that keeps the money growth limited. Gold is precious. It's good. Plenty of it. But no matter how plenty, that's the ceiling. The ceiling of how much money you can get ultimately is bounded by how much gold is under the air. Which is, it's big, but it's not. There will come a time when I need more. So they said 1971, let's get rid of that. Okay. And they did. Genius idea. It's a wrong idea, but it's genius. It's a thought that they had it. Then 1984 comes Nixon. Somebody from those institute, the capitalist institute, they said, well, there is one more rope that keeps holding the money down. There is some big weight with a rope tied to the money, and the money, no matter how much it flies, there is a ceiling. What that ceiling is? That ceiling was the economic growth, because there was a time there is a regulation. How much money or wealth can the Federal Reserve produce and the US and the world can consume depends on the economic growth. So what should we do? They told Nixon, deregulate the banks and the money. Split the relations between money growth and economic growth. So let money, you could have $10 billion worth of money when your company and corporates and all your assets are no more than $10 million. Easy. With the stocks and with the interest rate. And then the one of the ex presidents or chiefs of the Federal Reserve, I think I forgot his name, Hall something. Anyway, when he said today we can control the entire wealth of the world through the interest rate. We can adjust the interest rate from the Federal Reserve, and then we can move the economy and the money up or down. And as they were doing it with the inflation, in order to control the inflation, you either raise the interest rate so that people borrow less money because the interest rate is too high, and therefore you can keep the flow of money less. And if you want more money to flow, especially like during Corona, get the interest rate down to zero so that everybody can get money no matter, even if you are too poor. Anyway, so that's the second one. Now, in 1974, when they said, okay, we don't need the gold to back our money, what do we back it up with? They looked at what is the most valuable resource that is natural resource, just like the gold, but is much, much more abundant than the gold. It was oil and petrol. So they said, let's use the petrol as a backup of our dollar. So we can now produce dollars up to the limit of how much the world is going to consume oil, which is the most wanted product or commodity for all the countries in the world, without any exception. No one is going to live without oil and gas and diesel, etc., because it runs all the factories, runs all the cars, it runs all the machineries, it makes your electricity. It's a commodity that's needed by all, so everybody needs that. So let's tie up the dollar with the petrol. So call up Saudi Arabia, call up King Faisal, as Trump was saying, hey King, why don't you sell your damn oil with dollar, and we will make you much more stable. We will help you do this and that and whatever. We will help you make Saudi Arabia the dominant one in the Middle East, or whatever they promised him. They did so many things. Why not? They say, we don't want you alone. We want you to bring OPEC, the other countries which are under your leadership. Do it for us. Do this favor. He did the favor. So now they said, okay, we disconnected our dollar from the gold because the gold has a ceiling, a limited ceiling, but the oil almost seemed unbounded. Then later, which I think since 2004, 2005, the Federal Reserve realized, and they came up with an idea. Look, after all, the oil has benefited us a lot, the petrol, but it also has a ceiling. Look, the we can produce $, is more than 5 trillion, no more than $5 trillion. That's our ceiling. That's at best. That's when the oil is sold at $120 a barrel. But that was for limited times only. And later on it was at 100. Then it goes to 80. During Corona, it went down to 20, 10, or even below zero. So they showed that this petrodollar means generating dollars based on how much petrol is going to be sold in the world and how much the world needs dollars to be able to sell, to buy the oil from OPEC and the other countries. Given that some countries will sell oil outside the regular or regulated markets, like the New York oil exchange, while London or Texas, Houston place, there are 3 places in the world where you can trade oil. And outside this, there is some. Forget about that. We are talking about the bulk of oil which is sold in dollar. It's good. We like it, but it does not give us the opportunity to produce more dollars. Why do you need more dollars? I said, well, didn't you see that in Corona, when the productions went very low, when the world had stopped and terminated, and the world needs the money, we have to be able to supply. We generated more than $13 trillion without any reason, without not above and beyond the need for petrol, above and the need for the to supplement the budget, the deficit of the budget in the United States. The Federal Reserve today, the only 2 reasons that make them able to produce dollars, valid reasons, are: 1, the order from the Congress. Congress makes a decree and order signed by the president. We need a loan for $100 billion. Or we need a total of $1 trillion for 2025, because that's what our deficit is. Okay, got it. The second reason, how much the world is going to need oil, depending on the expected cost of the price of the barrel and the number of barrels to be sold per year using the dollar. They count that, it's about $3.2 trillion. Plus $1 trillion from the United States, that's $4.2 trillion. Make some adjustments, you can grow it up to 5, no more than $5 trillion. What do? We stick with the oil. That's not going to help. Besides, the dependence on oil is decreasing. Dependence, not the sale by dollar. Today you have the solar energy that produces electricity. The expectation that this will cover more than 15% of the total need for electricity, which used to be in oil. So you lose 12 to 15, let's say 15% of the oil need. The other one is the wind energy. Again, that's about 10%. That's 25%. Then there is a nuclear energy, where countries like Iran, like Europe, Germany, Holland, many countries, France, they use up to 10% of their total energy need using nuclear. And with the regulations, if you ease up the regulations, you may be able to increase that. So there is the dependency on oil is going to be less and less and less. And they have the studies for that. So what do? If we keep dependent on the petrodollar, we will find ourselves out of money, or we will generate money without any base at all, which will cause inflation. And to deal with inflation is worse than dealing with the lack of money. See, when you don't have money, you force your butt to work in order to get it. But you have too much money above and beyond your needs. This becomes inflation. That makes the prices so high, so you can buy it,
because you have too much money, but the rest of the people cannot. And that is a problem. That's a problem, and irrespective of what that problem, how it's qualified. Then what do we do? 2004, the Federal Reserve, big elites, and when I said they have their think tanks, which are there, they said, let's create a new method now, away from how we get away from the petrodollar, or we add up to the petrodollar, whatever is sold by oil, let's get it. They created something called the swap lines. Swap lines. Swap line means it is a method to exchange dollars with the currency of a certain country that has a serious deficit in their budget. Let's take Turkey as an example. Turkey as an example, let's say at the end of the year, they look at their needs and their expenses, and then their income, they find, okay, we are going to need, let's say, $400 billion. We have only $200 billion. Or now that we will borrow $200 billion. Okay, where do they borrow their $200 billion? They go to the bank, or do they go to local banks? Either one, or that's what they will do. Okay, that's fine. The central bank, they says, why don't we talk to Turkey? They tell, look, your deficit is $200 billion, which is equivalent to 200 times 30, that's almost 6 trillion liras, Turkish liras. So you need to produce 6 trillion Turkish liras, which is, you are going to produce them without any backup, without any guarantee that you really can substitute them. That's a problem. Is that true? They say, yeah, of course it's true. They say, okay, we have a solution for you. Give me the 600 trillion liras, or 6 trillion liras, the ones that you are going to produce. Put them on my account. I will give you $200 billion right away. And whenever you need these liras, let's swap. Now, I will give you back your liras, and you give me back my dollars. So now you don't have, so this does not become a burden. It's not a loan. It is something that's guaranteed. The only difference is, give me now the dollars, or let's say you are going to take 200 billion liras. You need to give me, let's say, $60 billion for that. Give me the $60 billion, but give it to me 60 point or 65 billions. What's the five other, the 5 billions? This is the difference in the exchange rate between. There is an exchange rate difference, correct? Yeah, that's correct. Okay, give me all that's all I need from you. And for the time period that the dollars were in your account, you have to give me the interest for them. There is an interest. It's a loan. So I charge you an interest. This is, somebody is insisting on calling me on Messenger, but anyway. So that's, they call it a swap line. Turkey now says, wow, that's a great idea. It makes my life easy. I don't have to go to beg the World Bank, who's going to put all types of conditions on me, and I'm straight dealing with the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve, okay, that works. Let me talk to other countries. Let me talk to Japan. Why Japan? Because Japan has a big budget, and therefore their deficit is usually also big. So they need probably $400 billion a year. So let's talk to Japan. And Japan, of course, we have influence, political influence over them. So we get Japan. Today, the Federal Reserve started playing with that. I said playing, testing it, just like POC, proof of concept. They started in 2004 to do that. By 2022, which is how much? 16 years, they were able to produce or to generate $27 trillion outside the petrodollar, which means they generate $27 trillion over 16 years. That makes it what? Almost 1.8 trillion per year, which is above and on top of what they are generating it for the United States deficit and for the sale in oil. The target, if you look at the research papers coming from the Federal Reserve and from political scientists and economists in the world, they say the target for the federal bank by 2040, which is what, 16 years from now, is to have 114 countries subscribed to the swap lines.
So directly dealing with the Federal Reserve, there is no need for petrodollar or even IMF or
No
even
need.
World Bank, nothing.
Exactly. And one of the researchers in Berkeley,
Wow.
he says the Federal Reserve is posing itself as the only unique and reliable source of loans for any country in the world. They deal with the central banks. They don't deal with the regular banks. They don't deal with anyone in the middle. Just like in the United States. Well, the United States is a little bit different because the federal gives loan to the government and it gives loans to the banks like JP Morgan, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs. They borrow money from the Federal Reserve. That's because they are even members of it. But worldwide, they don't. So they said, why do we need to continue rely on the petrol? Now, there is one more thing. The political part. Now here, I have to go against my own thoughts. Say, yes, there is some political geniuses in the United States. Still, it's not totally dry. There are someone who really think. They said, oh, you know what? We can use this concept in order now to use the petrol as a means to suppress nations, as a weapon, strategic weapon, just like the nuclear weapon. How do you do that? What goes in your mind? Said, one reason why the oil prices remain high is because the United States, benefit from that because of the petrodollar. Because if you sell the oil for $10, even if you sell 100 million barrel a day, that's 1,000 million dollar a day, which is 1 billion. 365, that's $365 billion. That's almost 1/3 trillion. So we lose. So we cannot afford that. We keep the prices high. And that's strategic. Now, if we have another option to generate the dollars using the swap lines, I no longer need the prices of oil to be high. That's good. That's good. I can use this as a weapon against the top big powers. I can really make them kneel down to their knees in order to beg me, the United States, to give them loans, like Russia. 70% of the budget, Russian actual annual budget, comes from the oil. Their economic value is 70% depends on oil. So now, and Russia is benefiting from the fact that the prices of oil are high. Now, of course, Russia is not the one that makes the prices of oil high. It's the United States. It's the New York Stock Exchange. It's London Stock Exchange. It's Houston, not Russia. Russia cannot impose a price. It doesn't have the power. The one who has the power are the ones who owns the stock and the exchange markets in the world, which is the United States and partially Britain. So now we can use the oil as a weapon. Today we decide that let's give a pinch into the face, the Russian face. Bring down the price of oil for 10, make it for about 6 months, no more than $10 a barrel. Russia will lose almost 10 out of 100. That's 90% of its income. They are going to beg the United States, and actually they are willing to do whatever the United States wants. Today they are doing it, but then they will do it by force, not because they like to do it. It's, excuse my expression, it's like a prostitute who goes into prostitution because she is desperate.
Wow.
But now she goes there because it becomes there is no other choice. Anyway, you can ask the brother to delete this phrase from my talk, this example.
No, I think is this.
United States.
But this is this Abu Talha, is this something that are you reading this, or is this your analysis of what's happening? I mean, is this what you're saying?
No. I'm reading. No, I'm reading it. I'm following this from. Look, I have been following it since 2004, 2005. It was when it was baby, when it was in trial. Then I looked at it during Corona. It went up higher.
So, Sheikh, this is more than even nuclear weapon. If US
much more than nuclear. Look, how big was the petrodollar for the last since 1974 until 2024, which is what 50 years. 50 years. How big it was? Big. Everybody talks petrodollar. There are thousands of books. Petrodollar, Saudi, etc. It's big. Everybody recognizes that. Swap lines is going to be 10 times more powerful than the petrol. Now, one
so
was.
What, Sheikh? That's it.
Nothing.
Nothing but
the only one who's talking about it.
No, nothing
I'm
but
not the only
US.
one who's talking about it. Huh?
I mean, at the end, it will be nothing but the US. Nothing but US as far as control is control. My goodness.
Yes. It will be big. It will be big unless a country comes out and says, to hell with all of you. I am going to produce only gold-based money. I don't care about your swap lines, your deficits, etc. And I will use only the power of money which I have. I am not going to follow the strategy of the United States to say, United States is devilish country when it comes to money. They say, you know why? Look, in the US, think about it. You probably know better than me. Each state in the United States is not allowed to produce a budget with deficit. But the federal government is allowed. How could this be? That if California, which is the third largest economy in the world, after the total United States and China, then California is big. California cannot produce a budget with deficit. Why the United States government doesn't do that? United States says, deficit is the only indicator that our money and economy grows. Because if we have a deficit of $200 or $300 billion, today it's about $800 billion, that means we have to work every single element of our bodies and machines to make that money. Otherwise, it becomes a burden upon us because we borrowed the money and we have to pay our interest on that. So we have to grow our economy more. Now, you must be crazy. It's just like in the family. You'll say, you know what, guys, we are going to have 2 picnics every week. But You, my son, is going to work. My daughter, you have to go. My wife, all you have to do and go and clean the houses of our neighbor, so we can afford these two picnics per week. Why do you need the two picnics? That's number one. Number two, why is it if you really want your wife to work, why don't you work it out between you because of the importance of that? Whether there was a deficit or not, our budget is limited. We'll say we are going to spend $1,000 a month. However, we are going to make $1,200 a month. I work and you work. Let's do that. You can motivate me, you can motivate my wife, you can motivate my son, you can motivate your child in order to do extra work. United States says, no, we don't have to deal with this S thing. We are going to borrow the money ahead of time, so everybody has to work his whatever in order to make that happen. And we are going to increase your taxes. If you don't like it, you'll pay me more taxes. So you have to work harder. So no matter how much taxes I can take from you, you are going to be able to live. That's the mentality which they came up to keep this machine of economy growing. So now with that thing, deficit is by de facto a fact in each and every country in the world, including Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, the oil moguls of the world, including Britain, including the EU. EU, by the way, European Union Central Bank, is the largest borrower of swap lines, largest participant in swap lines. Britain is a participant. France is a participant. Canada is. Brazil is. Who else?
I'm sure India
Japan
is probably doing
is.
this.
India, I did not see it. I did not check that, but there are lists. But the point is, look, when I talk about, I was talking about with some shabab the other day and other places. I said, why don't we hear this from anyone else? Not because you are not listening to places which talk about real things. That's not my problem. Why you are not hearing about it?
No. It's not that. I mean, I just had discussion on petrodollars with Brother Adnan from UK, but this idea.
Nobody talks about it.
This did not come
there
out.
are
That
few-
I mean, this is genius if
No,
it
no.
works out. I mean, for their perspective, this is.
It is.
I mean, this is another
It is.
100
I
years,
thought-
Abu Talha. Unless there is that
It
factor,
is.
which is another state coming with a whole different
Yes.
ideological perspective.
It is, banks, whenever a bank gives a loan to someone, that's slavery. The bank
Right.
enslaves the person for X amount of time. And usually when I talk about this, I bring a live example. One of my friends in Milwaukee, he used to own a factory to produce machinery. He's a machinery factory. Powerful, genius, good, very good producer. And then when the 2008 crisis, before 2008 crisis broke in, or almost during that same time, some of his accounts, he used to sell equipments for in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, North Wisconsin, who were producing spare parts for Ford. Spare parts like brakes, it's many spare parts for Ford. Ford went almost bankrupt. Remember the cases.
Yeah.
Ford was in deep crisis. So they canceled the contract with Oshkosh. Oshkosh canceled the contract with Mike Isle, my friend.
Oh boy.
But Mike now, when he got the contract from them, in order to be able to supply and to fulfill the contract, see the last one in this chain, in this supply chain, the last one is the one who's actually producing the product, which goes to Oshkosh, from Oshkosh to Ford, from Ford to their industry. This man borrowed money, let's say $5 million, to be able to do the contract. Now that $5 million is defaults now because he already has the loan and he got the money and he started producing. The contract is cancelled. Okay, so that's the way it goes in the banking industry, meaning that this person becomes enslaved. Now I bring this as example. I put it in my book, actually, in the book Fall of Capitalism and Rise of Islam. I got permission from him. I said, I will talk about your story. I know it firsthand. So I had permission from him. So then he had several contracts like this, defaulted all. So now he's under the pressure of the bank. Now the bank says, I need my money. As well, here is my factory. You take over my factory. The bank sits in his factory and appoints new leadership, new general manager, etc. And he can only visit his own factory by permissions from the bank. They had security places. That's slavery. Okay. Now the bank comes a couple of months later and tells him, look, all your factory, we have been sitting there for a few months. It doesn't make 20 or 30% of what you owe us. There is a problem here. He says, okay, that's all I have. Said, no. You have your home and farm. You need to sell us or to sell your home and farm and pay us money. Okay, no problem. We'll do that. House and farm. Now in the house, he has his wife and his daughter. His wife and his daughter, they leave him. And now he goes and lives with some friends and he cuts trees in order to live. He falls from the tree, breaks his chest for a while because of what the banks have done. That's not all. Finally, the bank comes and says, Mike, you still owe, after all of this, that's not sufficient. Okay, that's all that's there. They said, no, there is one more thing. What's more thing? They said, you have a life insurance.
Oh my goodness.
We need a mandate over your life insurance. Then he comes to me and he says, Mohammed, what do I do? I said, well, if you sign that contract for your life insurance, you are worth one bullet, 10 cents worth. And that insurance company or that bank will find someone to kill you right on the spot. Because his insurance value was about $10 million, life insurance. So they wanted the $10 million if in case he dies, because they want to go. So that's slavery. When I said it's absolutely enslaved. So now the World Bank, the Federal Reserve, is about to enslave all nations of the world. Not leave alone hegemony, leave alone
colonialism, imperialism,
taking over, imperialism. Forget it. It's absolute slavery. Absolute slavery. I have your money. I have your own currency. You can no longer produce currency of your own for the people to buy tomatoes in your place or to buy milk anywhere for your children if the Federal Reserve says, no, I'm not going to give you any of your money. That is what the world is facing. It's called swap lines. That's
now this has to be the next need research. I have to do this to figure out what is.
Yeah,
wow.
do that research.
خلاص, the podcast is over, let's say, but يعني
لا لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل الهمام نحن فينا عمر لا لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل الهمام نحن فينا عمر صبح بدا نور ظهر نجم وشمس وقمر ألقى على الدنيا الدرر هذا عمر كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر كي تستفيد من العبر. هذا عمر، هذا عمر. لا، لن تدوم الجراح، بل سيأتي الصباح. نحن أهل الكفاح، نحن فينا عمر. لا، لن تدوم الجراح، بل سيأتي الصباح. نحن أهل الكفاح.